Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Hope you're doing well and having a great weekend. Josh is severe weather out of the Raleigh area, and we've got ourselves a powerful storm over the south central United States now beginning to produce some tornadoes and severe weather over parts of the mid south. And that storm is going to march eastward, strengthen as it moves up the east coast, and produce some strong winds, very heavy potential flooding rainfall, some severe weather again tomorrow. And on the backside, as the cold air catches up, we could have a little bit of snow moving in here tomorrow evening into the early part of Monday for portions of the Northeast and Mid Atlantic states, especially west of 95. But we're going to take a look at some potential possibilities here over the next few days. Major East Coast storm, potential for wind gusts exceeding 60 miles per hour for much of the coastal northeastern U.S. into Atlantic Canada. Low pressure deepening quickly as it moves up towards Maine, and on the backside, a switch to some snow tomorrow morning. And we may even see a few flakes in Philadelphia, Baltimore, D.C., maybe even New York City, and especially over western New England, eastern New York, and across southeastern Canada away from the Maritimes. So a very significant storm in place. Here's a look at our current hazards. You see we have flood watches in effect for a good chunk of the Northeast, winter weather advisories for upstate New or watches, I should say, upstate New York and Vermont, high wind advisories over eastern Maine. And then down south, we have a tornado watch just issued from southern Arkansas into the central part of Kentucky and into middle Tennessee with tornado warnings in effect. Another storm will be impacting the Northwest. I'm not really going to have time to talk about that today, unfortunately, but more heavy rain coming to the coastal Northwest, heavy snow across the mountain Northwest, and some strong winds on the lee side of the Rocky Mountains over here. Here's a look at our water vapor image, and you all can see here a very intense trough digging southeastward here. And on the warm side of this, we kind of have two troughs here, and they're not quite phasing, but on the warm side, as this trough ejects, we're seeing thunderstorms blowing up very quickly here this afternoon with the potential for some tornadoes as there is some wind shear. The surface flow is kind of out of the south-southwest. The flow aloft is out of the west-southwest. With that, you have directional wind shear as that wind continues to build with height. We see the potential for updrafts to turn into quick tornadoes. So that's what I'm watching for you guys here. And we're going to keep tracking this through the night tonight. I think tomorrow, by the time it moves over to the East Coast, we see more of a straight line wind threat. But I do have my eye on this portion of the East Coast for potentially a tornado or two in the afternoon. I'm going to talk about why here in just a second. So let me get that back off the screen for you guys here. And I don't know. Sorry about that. Been a long day already here with family things already this morning going on. But here's a look at the current radar, and you all can see we do have tornado warnings north of I-40 here in Tennessee and near Humboldt. We do have potential tornado activity here. This is at about 1 in the afternoon central, 2 eastern, and a previously warned tornado cell near Paris, Tennessee now is a severe thunderstorm warning and additional severe weather impacting portions of southwest Kentucky. So here's a look at where our watch box is drawn. And let me get that off the screen and show you all here the tornado watch, which has over 5.5 million Americans at risk here, right on to about 7 o'clock tonight. We could see another watch south and east of this here this evening, affecting the Mississippi Delta region, central and northern Mississippi, northwestern Alabama, middle Tennessee, maybe even into Kentucky. But I think our best chance to see tornadoes is going to be this afternoon, especially across the eastern half of this region, but potentially even over southeastern Arkansas. Outside of the tornado threat, some of these storms could produce some powerful winds. They'll have power outages. Trees may come down. Winds could get up to 70 miles per hour in the more intense storms. And a few of these cells could have hail as well. As we get into the later evening hours, I think the tornado threat does start to wane, but we do indeed still have a straight line wind threat east of Jackson, Mississippi, all the way down into central Louisiana, as far northeast as Oxford, Alabama, northwestern Georgia, even getting into eastern Tennessee overnight, a lesser chance somewhat, but we do have a marginal risk all the way over to Hickory, North Carolina, including Asheville, upstate South Carolina, Atlanta, Georgia, Florida Panhandle, all the way down to New Orleans into the northern Gulf. We have a marginal risk for severe weather, mainly damaging winds, and as far north as Cincinnati and Dayton, Ohio for today. Tomorrow, the threat for severe weather shifts a bit to the, not a bit, it does shift east, all the way down to Tampa, Florida, all the way up the East Coast to the Delmarva Peninsula, especially eastern parts of Virginia, eastern and central North Carolina and South Carolina, and much of Georgia. And I think the greatest chance for severe weather, including some tornadoes, is going to be in eastern North Carolina. And it may be something I think we may have to think about a slight risk coming from the Storm Prediction Center tomorrow afternoon. And that depends on how much rain we get in the morning, because if that rain moves out quickly and we get some breaks in the cloud cover, then we have more unstable air in place, and that could produce some more severe weather as there's more storm fuel in place. So that's what I'm going to be watching for you guys here tomorrow. Taking a look at the ingredients that are in place for this to happen, here's the GFS model. Here's the upper level wind flow, and you see a strengthening jet. It is positively tilted from southwest to northeast, but as the day wears on, we see the base of that trough rounding very quickly through the Carolinas and sending stronger wind flow aloft. And that's going to allow low pressure to deepen as it moves up the northeast into Atlantic Canada. And we see wind speeds up at the jet stream level as high as 200 miles per hour. So a lot of jet stream dynamics in place here are going to allow this low pressure system to deepen. And how close to the coast it gets and how quickly the cold air gets in behind it, it's still a little bit uncertain. I mean, there is certainly a potential if there's a little bit of slowing down on this, and the NAM model is showing this, may not always be correct. I mean, the NAM could sometimes get a little too aggressive, but if the low pressure forms a little bit further east, we could see snow on the backside all the way into parts of eastern Virginia and Maryland and up into New Jersey, New York, and Connecticut. So that is something I'll be watching for you on Monday morning. It's still a bit uncertain at this point as to how far that cold air gets. But if you see our front here, it's kind of lined up right in here, moving through the Appalachians around 9, 10 in the morning tomorrow. And as the day wears on, we see wind flow out of the south increasing, low pressure forming near Charlotte. This is 7 o'clock Eastern time, and that low continues to zip right up the coast. If it comes a little bit farther offshore, it may dry out too quickly. If it's a little bit farther inland, it may be too warm for snow. But if it's right here in the sweet spot that the NAM is showing, then we could be talking about a little bit of snow here in places that hardly got anything last winter. So a surprise Monday morning is probably the worst case scenario. Not the likeliest scenario, but something I do think we still need to keep a very close eye on until this low exit stage right. And oh, by the way, winds out ahead of it are going to be pretty intense here over coastal New England late tomorrow night and especially Monday morning. And then Atlantic Canada later Monday morning into Monday afternoon. The low is going to exit, but again, every model is showing a slightly different scenario, and a few millibars, a few miles placement could mean a world of difference as to what you see in your backyard. So that's what I'm watching for you guys here pretty closely. The GFS model has been pretty much in line with this changing over to some wet snow. It is not showing nearly that much over Ohio and Western New York and Pennsylvania as it was before. It's got the change over a little farther east across the Smokies and the Blue Ridge, straight on up through places like Harrisonburg and Stanton, Virginia, up to maybe Frederick, Maryland, up to the Poconos. And eventually here by early Monday, this is 7 a.m., a quick change over to some snow or a mix of rain and snow over eastern PA, central and eastern Maryland, maybe north central parts of Virginia, including Prince William, Stafford, Caroline counties. Those areas could see snowflakes early Monday. But I think our bigger snows end up well to your north over eastern New York, over western Mass, northwestern Connecticut, Vermont, northwestern parts of New England. And believe it or not, not really much of a snow for Maine. We had a big snow this time last week. We're talking about heavy rain, strong winds, and then things shutting off before it gets to be cold enough for any snow. We just see it in the mountains really at this point. But this storm's going to be moving quickly. I showed you that jet stream earlier. And because those winds are around 200 miles per hour up at about 35,000 feet, the system is going to be on the move very quickly. So as quickly as it hits, it's going to be leaving. But until then, we've got a lot of rain coming, and that could be a potential issue here. We're going to look at the severe weather threat a little bit one more time here. And those of you tuning in a little bit later today or tonight who haven't gotten a chance to watch, this is going to be long gone by then. But this afternoon, we see this is 3 o'clock Central, 4 Eastern. We see the threat for severe weather, some individual supercell type storms lined up in a line here, and a few additional storms popping up out ahead of it that we do need to keep an eye on. As the evening wears on, there could still be some severe supercell type storms embedded in this line, all the way down to Jackson, Mississippi and Vicksburg, for example, all the way up into Oxford, Mississippi, maybe even Northeast Alabama, all the way into Eastern and Southeastern Kentucky. This time frame here is about 8 o'clock, or I'm sorry, 7 o'clock Central, 8 o'clock Eastern. And then as the night wears on, we are going to lose a lot of that rotation in place for potential tornadoes, but we could still have some strong winds along this line, anywhere from eastern Tennessee right on down into southwest Alabama. This is 2 a.m. Eastern, and we may see a few thunderstorms in the upstate of North Carolina rolling into the foothills as well. So while you're sleeping tonight, do be prepared for maybe a gustier shower or storm. And then as the overnight hours, Wayne, we just see some rain and thunderstorms by tomorrow morning. This is 6 a.m. and the rain is now spreading east of Atlanta, getting towards Athens, maybe toward Greenwood, South Carolina, to Gastonia, and then moving northeastward, just going to be some rain and embedded thunder over southwestern Virginia, including the Roanoke area. We do have some tornado parameters in place this afternoon. We've got enough wind shear for a few brief, but potentially stronger, maybe EF2 type tornadoes here. So keep an eye on it. This is 3 o'clock this afternoon, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and then you see things start to wane after that. But still a small chance. We could see a tornado in the Nashville area early tonight, 6, 7, 8 o'clock. Overnight, the threat does wane pretty quickly. We'll have to keep an eye on things in Alabama around midnight, but I think overall the tornado threat's coming down at this point, and it's more of a heavy rain threat with embedded stronger storms. The HRRR model showing for Kentucky and Tennessee this afternoon, we see the lines of storms moving through here. Oops, sorry about that. I got a little jumpy with my mouse. You can see things moving along here pretty quickly to the east. We are still going to see potential severe weather all the way to Cookeville, maybe Chattanooga by about 9 o'clock tonight, Knoxville around 10 or 11. I think we are going to see mainly the severe weather is done by midnight, but we're going to have to still keep an eye on things down the I-75 corridor. But we should cool off here in Nashville and dry out by tomorrow morning. No threat for snow at this point. Looked like it yesterday, but the storm is moving a little faster to the east and then hanging up a little bit slower after that. Here's a look at our updraft helicity. These are where storms may start rotating or at least putting down some strong winds. You can see on the western side of the Nashville metro, we do have quite a bit of updraft helicity that's spin in the atmosphere. So keep an eye on these storms for potential hail, strong winds, and tornadoes, especially across this track here just north of 40. This is one model run. It could certainly shift a little bit on either side, so something to keep an eye on. But we still see helicity as we get into the nighttime hours into northwest Georgia and northeastern Alabama. Looking farther south, because I did mention you guys here, don't want to leave you out. Right now, not much of a threat for severe weather. I think by 4 or 5 o'clock, though, northern Mississippi into the Delta region, we'll be looking at showers and storms, which could be locally strong to severe. And this line goes all the way down to Natchez and Marksville around 8 o'clock tonight. So after it gets dark out, we're losing a little instability, a little storm fuel, but the winds aloft are strong enough to sustain some severe weather into the evening tonight. As we get overnight, I do think we're going to see a lot of that letting up. Keep an eye on things around Mobile and Monroeville here around 2 in the morning. The northern side of this line could hit Atlanta area kind of tough around 1 or 2 in the morning. And then we're just dealing with some rain and thunderstorms as the cooler air moves in. Looking farther south, the helicity is not quite as strong as what we see in Tennessee, but there are still storm tracks that we do need to keep an eye on here, especially concerned around Jackson up to Oxford during the late afternoon and evening hours, but even to the northwest of Birmingham, we have to keep an eye on things overnight tonight. And in southern Alabama and Mississippi, you're not completely out of the woods. The worst is probably north of you. But nighttime thunderstorms could produce a couple tornadoes in here. Maybe they're briefer at this point, but something we're going to watch. The other challenge we have to deal with is rainfall. Because of thunderstorms, we could see very heavy rain. Amounts here may get up to as much as 3 or 4 inches around Atlanta and especially in the Western Carolinas. Locally 5 inches around the Brevard and Pisgah forest areas. Farther north and west, generally about an inch or so of rain. Looking farther south and east, we're going to see some heavy rain in the morning tomorrow across western Florida, across Georgia, and the Carolinas could get hit with multiple waves of showers and storms with very heavy rain, especially eastern parts of North Carolina. Once you get south of I-4 in Florida, I don't think you're going to see a whole lot of severe weather, and you may not see much rain either. Things kind of fade by the time we get down to the Tampa Bay area tomorrow evening. So South Florida could get by here with little to no rain out of this, unfortunately, for those of you that do need the rain. Or fortunately, because I know we did have flooding in parts of South Florida last month. But here you can see, generally speaking, on the NAM, we're looking at well less than an inch of rain, maybe an embedded heavier storm somewhere here in South Florida. Typically speaking, though, when you get north of Citrus County, Florida, our amounts don't really climb to about an inch. And then really it's 1 to 2 inches across the rest of the Southeast. Even some slightly lower amounts possible here in South Carolina, depending on how these storms will line up. In the mid-Atlantic, though, the rain threat is going to be a lot heavier for tomorrow. The heavy rain threat, I should say, is a lot higher for tomorrow. And we'll start to see rain changing over to some snow around 5 o'clock or so, especially in the evening on the backside. But Pittsburgh may miss out on this if the NAM is right. Now, the NAM, in my opinion, may end up too overdone on potential snow line farther south and east. It's got it all the way down to about Roxborough, North Carolina, and Richmond. It's not out of the question. We see a few flakes on the backside tomorrow morning, but as far as accumulation, I just don't really see it happening. Farther north, though, in central Maryland, north and west of DC, up into eastern PA, I do think we could see some accumulation. North of the Hudson Valley, north of 84, we could definitely see accumulation, especially upstate New York. And the time frame for that doesn't look like it's really going to happen until tomorrow morning. So between 7 and 9, that changeover. I think this is out of New York City by now, but Boston could have some stronger rain and storms around lunchtime before things move away. And because of the storm track and the dry air that's coming in behind this, probably not a big deal for the East Coast. Here's a look, though, at the rain. That will be a big deal. You see, it's coming in waves. We're already dealing with rain tonight, Western New York and PA, and then rain spreads eastward tomorrow morning towards the Poconos. And we say wave after wave of rain, very heavy rain, and maybe some stronger storms here in eastern North Carolina, possibly even southeast Virginia. This is going to come in multiple waves. So eastern North Carolina, we're going to see a feed of rain starting late in the morning, continuing in the afternoon. We may get a bit of a break. There's more coming in the evening, and maybe 2 waves of severe weather in eastern North Carolina. You can see kind of a squall line feature here as our low is deepening. We'll dry out in the morning on Monday, and we should see much quieter, cooler weather during the day Monday. Snow totals from the NAM. And I don't want you to take this completely literally because I think it's way overdone. Let me bring in today's run. Sorry about that. 8 inches around Winchester, 8 inches around Harrisonburg, 9, 10, 12, 13 inches. That's assuming a 10-to-1 ratio. If you look at the Kushera, I don't think those amounts are going to be quite as high because the snow ratios will be less than 10-to-1, meaning this would be a wetter snow versus a fluffier snow. But I don't think we're going to see an inch or 2 inches in Greensboro. Could it snow a little bit? Yeah, certainly. I think it could. But if you end up looking at the snow depth, that's the number to keep an eye on. You see maybe a dusting in the Northwest Piedmont, maybe a dusting near Richmond, but pretty much nothing for DC, Philly, and on south and east. I think if somebody does get a dusting Monday morning, they would be kind of considered the lucky ones. You have to get back into the higher elevations, the Ridge Valley region here, where we even have to talk about an inch or 2 of accumulating snow. There could be 3 or 4, maybe even 6 inches in parts of West Virginia, but you really have to get up into the Northeast to see that more significant snowfall amount. And I will show that to you here from pivotalweather.com. And you can see upstate New York, northern Vermont, the mountains, generally 6 to 10 inches of snow is going to fall. It's going to come down pretty quickly here, a pretty heavy snowfall event, but it's going to be out as quick as it is in. Higher amounts will be confined to southeast Canada, the highlands of Quebec. Here's a look at North Carolina, Virginia. You can see these waves of showers and storms, and take a look at some of these nastier looking cells here. We could see a little severe weather in here depending on how much sun pops out. But this is tomorrow evening, I think, when our chance for severe weather is at its greatest in eastern North Carolina. And then we just get hit with some rain overnight before things clear. And it'll be dry by morning as this rain lifts away. We do have some updraft helicity to keep an eye on here. A little bit of rotation possible, a couple of waves, but keep an eye on the Outer Banks for a brief tornado sometime tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow night. Showed you guys the snow here already. And then, of course, across Atlantic Canada, pretty significant snowfall expected for those of you in southeastern Quebec. The potential for 30 to 50 centimeters, locally higher amounts in the mountains. Montreal, Quebec City, 10 to 20 centimeters expected. Probably nothing, though, for most of New Brunswick and Nova Scotia. It's just going to be a little bit too warm. Here's a look at total amounts of precipitation, and this is from the NAM model. And we see a lot of folks in Connecticut, Massachusetts, Maine, New Hampshire that could see over 3 inches of rain. These numbers have come up. We saw 2 to 3 inches in yesterday's forecast. Now we're talking more like 3 to 4, maybe 5 inches of rain. So New York City could see very heavy rain, but I'm more concerned about New England. Of course, we had that flooding over the summer and fall. And unfortunately, the same places that have been getting wet, this is an El Nino, it's going to be a wet East Coast winter, are going to see more significant amounts of rain. So something we have to keep an eye on here for late Sunday night, and especially Monday, is going to be the threat for some flash flooding here and river flooding. The other thing I'm worried about is the wind gusts, and I will show those to you here. Winds start picking up tomorrow afternoon, 30 to 40 miles per hour. Then tomorrow night, 50, 60, maybe 65 miles per hour around Long Island. Maine, those winds pick up overnight. And then early on Monday, our winds are at their strongest, potentially 60 to 70 miles per hour, maybe even 80 miles per hour on Cape Cod and the islands, depending on how this low forms. The NAM can sometimes be a little too aggressive, but I've seen this on some of the global models. So my forecast is 60 miles per hour plus. I'd be shocked if we saw 80 or 90, but maybe 70, 75. definitely power outages, some damage, some very rough seas expected here. We're going to see this coming up into the Bay of Fundy as well. And looking at kilometers per hour across Atlantic Canada, we'll see numbers climbing to about 100 kilometers per hour around 5 in the morning on Monday, and then 110 to 130 or even 140 kilometers per hour here around midday Monday into Monday afternoon. Farther east, 90 to 110 kilometers per hour. So a big windstorm expected here. Most of that wind is actually on the front side. Winds are going to be out of the south to south-southwest. That takes the water and piles it right up the coast. And then behind the storm, it will be windy, but we'll see everything get blown back offshore as drier air moves in. So that's all I've got for you. No video tomorrow. I'm going to take the time off to be with my family and to worship. But I thank you for watching today. If you did enjoy this video, please consider subscribing. As always, I thank you all for your support and for any questions you may have. Happy to answer those when I get some time. I give all the glory to God, though. God, our creator, in my opinion, is the reason I'm doing this. He's given me this gift to share with you guys. As a Christian man, it's humbling. It's challenging knowing that, honestly, Christian people are in a shrinking, kind of a minority, honestly, a shrinking majority into a minority, as more and more people have just kind of turned away and decided not to follow God and follow Christ. Not up to me to judge you for that, by the way. For 30 years of my life, I was not a believer, but I will say, since I did become a believer, it gave me hope. It gave me the gift of knowing where I'm going eternally. And I pray that it does the same for you as well. God loves us all, no matter what you see, what kind of evil you see every day. We can choose to love him back and have a relationship with him. I made that choice. John 3:16 says that for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. And for me, it was like pretty simple. It was, you know what? I don't know what's going to happen to me, but I can choose to believe. At the very worst, if I gamble and I'm right, then I'm living eternally. And that's the promise given to me. At the very best, at the very worst, who knows? But honestly, having hope in the future is what's driven me to become successful in my everyday life. I don't measure my success anymore in how much money I make, how many sales I made, how many friends I have, how well we look. I measure my success in the glory that God has given me, and I pray He does the same for you. So I just wanted to share that with you all today. If I'm not going to apologize for it, but if you're listening or watching and this has kind of turned you away from me, I want you to believe whatever you want. I'm not going to judge you. I'm not going to be narrow-minded about it. I just want to share what's important to me. So those of you who have chosen to believe or who are thinking about it, I would love to pray for you no matter what situation you're going through, because no matter what we believe, we're all going to face many more challenges and struggles in our life, especially this time of the year. And I want y'all to know that I support you, and I truly believe that prayer works, and I'm happy to pray for you and have others pray for you as well. I'll see you guys on Monday. Have a wonderful weekend. God bless you.